Hello, my name is Joe, and I'm going to talk to you today about event grids in Edelweiss. So, first of all, this raises the question, what is an event grid? Which we will talk about, and then we'll also talk about how exactly you use them in Edelweiss. Why event grids? Essentially, this is a way for publishers to show a list of the authors that they plan on sending on tour in the near-ish future. Oftentimes, the event grids go out before the catalog actually does, and so it's something that they are planning well in advance for, and they take various retailers and people, event people's bids on an event and decide where their money and time is best spent for that particular author. With the new world that we're in, a lot of events are oftentimes on digital and over Zoom and whatnot, and so they want to know that you have security set up and that you have the infrastructure that you need to make it a successful event. Why have events is it's a broader question. You increase your sales, hopefully, and that's the whole idea for everybody involved here is to sell more books, raise awareness about a particular author, about your store, which is there in the community engagement part. You, the more you're out in your community and the more interesting things you're able to offer to your community, the better. And it also allows you to maintain a good, solid relationship with your publisher. That's the gateway to the publisher is both your sales reps and also oftentimes through the publicity people who are responsible for sending authors out or not. But why event grids in Edelweiss? As back in the day, event grids were essentially a spreadsheet, and you saw on the spreadsheet you would see the author, their projected tour plans, and then you could write your pitch. And then the publicist on the other side, on the publisher side, would then have to go through a lot of spreadsheets and compile everything and make their plans that way. So basically, this is a way for that process to happen just all on one platform. And what's nice about that, as somebody who's bidding for an event, is that all the title information is there. So your past history with that author and their titles, their previous titles, and also the author bio and all the rest of the bibliographic data. You can tag titles and track your requests and communicate with your buyer and your frontline sales folks and all that kind of stuff. And there are more and more publishers using the event grids all the time. There's a lot on there. One thing about grids is that they are relatively locked down. They don't want my aunt to go in and request an intimate evening with John Irving or something like that. That's not what these are for, and so they do lock it down so that generally speaking, it's the sales reps who control access to the grids, but they also the publicists themselves can give access to grids as well. So Edelweiss is open to anybody, but the event grids are not. They are locked down. And it does that. The last point on this slide is worth paying attention to. The access is generally granted to customers. So if you don't actually order directly from a publisher, then you don't really have a relationship with that publisher because this is business and business relationships require transactions to exist in a way. But you want to make sure that if you do want an event with a Penguin author, that you are ordering titles directly from Penguin and you have a track record with them and that sort of thing. We're going to do a demo. I'm going to show you around the grids and how it all works. where to find it, how do we navigate it, all that kind of fun stuff. So when we're talking about requests, we're talking about, like I said, we are talking about a bid for an author. If you're remote, then you're not necessarily bidding against anybody else in a sense. You're just essentially like trying to convince the publisher to send the author to your remote location, which incurs a cost and time as well. If you are in a more metropolitan area and there are a lot of different bookstores around, then in a sense you are bidding against your friends. I just gave shrugging motion, which you can't see, but that is kind of how it goes. If you're in Chicago and there's 15 different Chicago stores all wanting one author to show up, then whoever has the most appealing bid or request here is going to land that author and hopefully have a successful event. So one thing that I hear from publishers all the time is that they just want to see excitement, which is easy, really, if you're requesting an author and somebody whose books you love. That conveying that excitement can be an easy thing. You just want it to be concise, and that's the next thing is they want to hear the plans. This is going to be a ticketed event. We're going to do this at an old theater that's popular for is a popular venue for this sort of thing, or you're going to do it in store. You just tell your plans for this particular title, and then there is an expected attendance and an expected sales field, and they do want to see that. And the best advice I can give there is to be realistic. If this is a debut poetry author, you're not going to sell 200 copies of a book, probably. It's the state of the world being as it is. So if you're going to sell 20 books, great. That's 20 books that may not have been sold otherwise, and would be a successful event in many cases. So just keep that in mind. If you are going to have expected sales in there, the more realistic you are, the less likely it is that you're going to disappoint somebody and have what they would see as an unsuccessful event by not living up to your expected sales. In the delivery results thing, this is really just like after an event, it's just a good practice to let your sales rep or the publicist at the publisher know how it went. We wanted 50 people to be there, 45 showed up, we sold 30 books. That's pretty good. In the instance on the screen here, 200 people showed up to an event. That's awesome, and I don't think that's something that anybody would sneeze at. So again, report back, and the more transparent you are and the more you communicate, the better your relationship you're going to have with that publisher, and the more likely you are to get more events in the future. So now I'm going to show you around the site a little bit. So this is a very pared down vision of the Edelweiss homepage. Event grids, you'll see up at the top here. We will just click into event grids. So you may or may not, depending on how you have things in your account, have this sidebar closed down. Generally speaking, there's a lot of information, a lot of tools available in that sidebar, so at the very least you want to know that it's there and that there's stuff there. So at support, sometimes we hear from people who don't realize that this is a thing. But you'll see within here, in the event grid options, you can see open and unsubmitted event grids, opened and submitted grids, and then archived grids. So the archived grids are just going to be older grids. So if you want to find something that a grid that you did last year, you can find that very easily in there. The opened and unsubmitted is really just where all the active current grids are, ones that you have not worked on yet or that you're currently working on. You can see over on the side how many titles are on each grid and how many requests you've entered in there so far. and then the date it was created, and the most important date is that due date. Kind of lets you know how long you have before you can before you need to submit your grid. Note on the side that if you have a lot of unsubmitted things in here, you can refine your list according to publisher. And also want to point out that if you've looked at this particular event grid and it's not one that you plan on submitting a request for, you can go ahead and just get rid of it by clicking on Archive Event Grids. It's a little filing cabinet looking thing. So you push that, it goes away. Oop, that was not what I wanted. It goes away, but it doesn't disappear, it just goes into your archived list here. So I'm going to enter an event grid. You'll notice that the event grid looks a lot like a catalog. And there is just a few major differences. One is that there is tour information over here on the right hand side. Instead of having a place for you to enter order quantities, you're going to see information about the author and the tour that the publisher is planning. You also see who exactly would be touring. If there's a team, it's the author and the illustrator, or 2 or 3 people worked on a book, then you'll see who is actually projected to be the touring author. You also see pronunciation for their name and their preferred pronouns, and then the locations for where they would like a tour to happen. Oftentimes they'll pick like the major cities in each geographical area and kind of branch out from there. You can see the author's hometown. So if you're a Toronto bookstore, then this is your person. And then you can also see comments a little bit from the publicist about what this event might be like and how relevant it is at the time and that sort of thing. You can also, the way that you make a request is to click here. There's a little coffee cup here, and you click on Make Request. So there are multiple sections, 2 large sections here. The first one is a general event profile, and this is something that you write up one time for your store. You probably want to add a little bit more information than what is in this sample one here, but basically just say who you are, who your store is, successful events you've had in your past, where you're located is key, different venues that are at your disposal, that sort of thing. And that, again, that's something that's going to stick with every event request that you have. So that, again, that's something that you write once. If I was you, I would copy this into a file and just save it somewhere else, because the way to update this is to just change something in it, and then when you make a request and then you save it, and then your event profile is forever then altered, so don't delete it on accident unless you have a copy of it somewhere else. In this case, for the request for this title, again, we would really want to be very concise and clear about how much we like this author and where we would like this to happen. In this case, the locations being anywhere, I would assume that I would want to read the comments more closely, but I would assume that this would be a Zoom sort of thing. So talk about what sort of program, whether you use Zoom or whatever else, whether or not you would require a book purchase before event attendance, or if that's part of the ticket price, or however you like to operate that sort of thing. Just be very clear and concise in here. And then your expected attendance, again, is very key. You want to let them know how many people you would expect based on past events and based on how well you do with this particular author. And then the expected sales from that, because unfortunately attendance does not equal sales unless you require a ticket and that sort of thing. You can also enter in a location where your event would be. That's it. Essentially, after that, it's just rinse and repeat. Scroll through and see who you would like to see at your store, who's a good fit for you, who you sell well. Notice again, it is like a catalog entry. So you'll see the title summary, the contributor bios, the links, whether it's the excerpt or an author interview video, that sort of thing. Key selling points is something that they often add to their catalog entries. And you'll also see your comp information. So you'll see comparable titles, whether it's their previous titles or titles that are comparable. If you are an above the tree line or analytics customer, then you'll also see your past sales and inventory history here, so you don't have to go look it up in your point of sale system. It's nice and easy. And that's it. So again, you just go through and you make the request that you want to make, and then I'm going to scroll up here. Sorry if that gave you a headache. At that point, when you make a request, that's just like the first step in the process. The second step is to submit your grid. You can submit it here by clicking submit, or from the event grids page itself. So I would click submit here. So if we have a couple of requests on here, say you requested 2 authors here, that would say request 2, and you would click submit, and your sales reps and the publicists at the publisher would not see your request until you submit it. And then once you have submitted it, it will show up. It'll be removed from the unsubmitted folder and added into the submitted folder, where I think we have a sample one with a super cool looking dog. But you'll see the date that you submitted it, and the date it was created, and the date it was due, and all that fun stuff. If you submitted it on accident, you can unsubmit it. Or if you're completely done with this, you don't need to see it anymore, go ahead and archive it, like so. And that's pretty much it. Nice and simple, nice and easy. As with most things, the recommendation is to keep a clean workspace. So if you have gone through some of these grids and there's not a title in it within a grid that you're interested in, then go ahead and archive it, and then it kind of just goes away, and then your workspace here is only for those grids that you plan on working in. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to send us an email at support@abovethetreeline.com. If you have more questions about grids and want to see some of this information that I just showed you in more detail, I will show you where I click. There's a question mark, then I'll take you to the help documents. You click into booksellers, and down here you'll see step-by-step instructions for eGrids for booksellers. And included in there, and for example, in the making an event request, are some tips and tricks that we have garnered throughout the years. All right, thank you very much.